Well, good evening, everybody who might just be joining us and hopefully avoiding the mandatory Twitch pre-roll ads and all that kind of nonsense that is happening. We're live for round 14 of 15, the penultimate round of Revolution Season 13 here in Tier 2. And it's actually the mystery round tonight, so I think you can completely ignore what it says there about Australia being the track on your screen. Because here are the options for the track, and we're getting super close to the time now, so I might actually miss the announcement, but we have the option of racing at Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Miami, Imola, Spain, Monza, Azerbaijan, Mexico, Las Vegas, or Abu Dhabi tonight. And wherever we race, we will also be featuring a sprint race complete with sprint qualifying. So we're in maybe for a bit of a longer one tonight, but it should be an exciting one because there's not really an easy, straightforward way for these drivers to prepare for every single eventuality that might befall us tonight. Looks like a pretty full grid, all things considered. 16 drivers at the moment. That's pretty cool. Obviously, I'm not racing tonight, but these guys are. They're an awful lot quicker than me in Tier 2. One of the things that I should probably go through, but I really don't want to miss the track announcement. I mean, it'll probably show up on my screen. We should go through the standings. I'll do this a little bit in a bit more detail when we head on out into qualifying and people are on their initial outlaps. But Snipes, as we have known really for most of this season, is leading the championship, but only currently by 11 points to his closest rival, Easy Game, in the Racing Bull. And then Testwill not far behind as well. What is that? Just 22 points, I think, behind Snipes. So Snipes could, theoretically, wrap up the championship here tonight, but it's not exactly nailed on and straightforward how that is going to happen. So we'll have a look properly at the table, like I say, once we're actually into the lobby. But I don't want to miss this announcement that should be forthcoming about where exactly we are racing tonight. Again, to give you those options for the mystery round featuring that sprint race: Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Miami, Imola, Spain, Monza, Azerbaijan, Mexico, Las Vegas, and Abu Dhabi. Any one of those, and it's going to be the same, the sprint race and the main event, the main Grand Prix. But nobody knows where it's going to be yet. Spin the wheel. Scorter is urging. What happens? Where do they spin the wheel? Does it show up in the chat? I assume it just shows up in the chat. You guys can't see. I'm trying to watch. I'm trying to watch and give everybody the most up-to-date information that I have available, but I don't have any up-to-date information available currently. We're just waiting to see which of those tracks is going to be selected for the mystery round in Tier 2 tonight. I think I heard that Tier 1 is not racing tonight. Yeah, Tier 1 not racing. No pressure today? Whoa, lots of pressure. Testwill, what are you talking about? Mr. Third in the championship, 22 points off the championship leader. Comfortably third, though, I think it's fair to say. Loads of pressure, all the pressure in the world. You know what I mean? Stressful, difficult. Oh, there you go. Look at that. The track updated. So it must have, the wheel must have been spun. We are in Mexico. That should be pretty interesting. Mexico then for both events tonight. It is going to be a sprint qualifying and a sprint race in Mexico, and then the regular qualifying and the regular Grand Prix in Mexico. So we have 48 laps of racing scheduled for tonight, plus all of those exciting bits of qualifying in between. And as I say, a slim chance, it's fair to say, for Snipes to wrap up the championship tonight. But he's really, like I say, only 11 points ahead currently of his nearest rival. And judging by how well Easy Game has been racing all season, and indeed Testwill sitting there in third, I don't think that the championship will be decided tonight. But plenty of points on offer. Sprint race, I think it's worth 8 points to the winner on top of all of the other stuff. So things can happen. Here we go. Right, as I did mention, now that we're actually like in the lobby, let me show you the standings in a little bit more detail. So there you can see Snipes in that Haas on 171 points. This is after last week, which was the Japanese Grand Prix, of course, at Suzuka. Easy Game sitting in second. Jumped his teammate, apparently, last week onto 160 points. So just 11 points to gap there. And then 149 points for Testwill. I think really those are your three championship contenders, but I actually don't want to put too much pressure on Testwill because I'm not sure that that's an incredibly great position to be in. Is the lobby going to break in terms of challenging the championship? But Testwill is slightly involved. Now, here's the constructors, and I think fair to say dominant from the Racing Bulls all season. And it looks like Haas have probably got second wrapped up. So the constructors is maybe a little bit less interesting, excuse me. Obviously, Racing Bulls are already confirmed as champions because there is no way that anybody can catch them. But this is, as I say, this is where things are really interesting. Here in the Drivers' Championship, I am not racing in this tier, Lynn, which is why you won't see my name on the leaderboard. But also, if I was racing in this tier, my name would be somewhere down here on the leaderboard because I am not as fast as the drivers who are being featured tonight. Anyway, enough of all that rubbish, because what people actually came to see is some racing. And as I say, it is the mystery round tonight, so nobody knew exactly where we were until, well, just around about 60 seconds before the lobby went live, or at least the lobby started and qualifying was underway. We are in Mexico and we have 48 laps of racing planned, but that will be across two events. First of all, we're going to have the sprint race, which is why you can see in the top left of your screen SQ1. This is sprint qualifying currently taking place as the drivers, a couple of the drivers at least, get on an out lap and get ready to set that banker lap time. So this will be for the sprint race, which ought to be 12 laps long at Mexico. And then the main Grand Prix will have its own separate qualifying event. And that's where the big points are on offer. But I think that means a grand total of something like 35 points can be won tonight if you get pole positions and fastest laps and everything else taken into account. Right. Full track map, please. It looks like Scorter in the Kick Sauber might be the first man to set a lap around Mexico tonight. I don't know Mexico particularly well, but I shall try and talk through it as we see Scorter burning down to what, around about 60% battery at the end of this very, very long main straight, nice and hard onto the brakes. That kicks Sauber car sliding through the first few twisty corners of this racetrack, and then the rear wing is now open as we enter the first DRS zone of the track. A lot of these corners around Mexico, I think it's fair to say, are reasonably tight. This track is not necessarily easy on the tyres. I think most of these guys will still consider this to be a one-stop, but you will start seeing tyre degradation and just the overall quality of the tyres dropping off a fair bit, I think, as the races drag on tonight. Right, score to then 56.8 currently at the end of the timing line of Sector 2. And now the final few corners of the lap. Tyre wear is rough. Yeah, it is very rough around here, Milan. I agree. Scorter then, going to cross the line, and then we'll try and dip over to the Mercedes in a moment, who I think will be next to set a lap of 1:16.358. I'm afraid I cannot tell you whether that's going to be good at all. That is not good, though, from Zezin, who apparently is on a fast lap, but it does not seem like a particularly fast one. Barney, teammate of the current championship leader, is nearing the end of his first flying lap in this sprint qualifying. There you see Zezin's time up on the board of 1:27.1, so it wasn't really worth following along with that one. But Barney crosses the line and absolutely blows Scorter's time out of the water. Look at that, a 1:15.5, incredibly quick from Barney. And Easy also knocks Scorter down the pecking order, a 1:16.1 for the Racing Bulls driver, who is, of course, still in pursuit, really, of that championship and still in a bit of a battle tonight with Snipes. Trujsteri then, how can he navigate the final few corners of the Mexico racetrack? Snipes needs to outscore Easy Game by 17 points total tonight to secure the championship. Well, 17 is a lot, but we did discussing with Lynn earlier that there's plenty of points on offer tonight, purely because of the sprint race also being included. There you go, on the soft tyres, interestingly, from Trujsteri. Slower than the people ahead of him on the mediums, a 1:16.7. LTK has just set a lap time, but this is who I want to ride on board with for a moment. LTK Tarrier also sets provisionally the pole lap time, but here's the championship leader, Snipes. Little bit of a wobble on the second to last corner there, but he manages to keep the car pointing in the right direction. Is it going to be a quick lap? It's not the quickest lap that we have ever seen from Snipes, to be honest, but a 1:16.4 from the championship leader, from the Haas driver. We'll slot him into P7 for now, but I think Wisburn just knocked him down the pecking order a little bit, and also I believe that TS in the Williams has just done the same. Soul Demon then. Be hitting the end of Sector 2 here. What's the lap time like currently? 56.3. I mean, it seems right on pace to me. Not very much battery remaining for the Alpine driver, but plenty of juice to give him that final burst over the line. And that's pretty good, to be honest, from Soul Demon. A 1:15.7 does split the V-Carbs on the grid, who were occupying that second row for a moment, but now the Alpine slots into fourth position with that 1:15.781. Looks like maybe Tolu is the only person currently out on track who has not yet set a lap time. And yeah, he's burning batteries, so this is intended at least to be a fast lap for Tolu. You can see the time ticking away, only about 5 minutes left in the sprint qualifying session to go. It is a fair chunk shorter than the ordinary qualifying, as we see the Alpine there just get out of the way for Tolu as he rounds that. It's almost like one big long right-hander there in Sector 2. It's kind of how you treat it. How do you qualify? Well, everybody qualifies, Lynn. So everybody will be racing. It's not an elimination process in the qualifying, but essentially whoever can get the fastest lap in qualifying before the time runs out will be sitting on pole position. Currently, that is LTK Tarrier, in the Alpine with a 1:15.1. Has Tolu got anything to say about that? It's not going to be pole position, but it's pretty fast from Tolu. It's into the top 6. 6th place for the Red Bull, 1:16.253. So the grid is starting to take shape, but we can see that Infinity, Skullkiller, Arbon, and Igor are yet to set lap times, but there is still 4 minutes to go in the sprint qualifying session, so still a little bit of time to get some lap times in. You can see Barney, who's currently sitting on the front row of the grid, occupying that 2nd place, is going to go again here. This is an outlap. 100% battery charge, and in just a second, he'll be turning that battery up as he crosses the start-finish line. There we go, and Barney starts another flying lap, hoping to knock LTK Tarrier there off his perch. Now then, how is Easy Game doing? Nah, just bringing it into the pits. Never mind that. That's not a real lap. That is not a real lap. But this is Barney, I mean, heavily outperforming his teammates so far. And as I'm probably going to keep mentioning all evening, to remind myself as much as to remind you guys, his teammate Snipes is currently the championship leader, and as Milan discussed, if Snipes can outscore Easy Game by 17 points total tonight, then he will secure the Drivers' Championship with a race to go. But Easy Gamer is absolutely no pushover, and I think a gap of 17 points to Easy for Snipes would be probably reasonably surprising. Well, this looks like Barney's giving it absolutely everything, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be that quick at the end of it all. He is going to turn the battery up and going to cross the line. Well, just goes to show what I know. Barney giving it absolutely everything, really sliding or slamming the car, I suppose, into some of those final few corners. Breaks the 1:15 barrier, or 1:14.9 for the Haas driver, is good enough provisionally for pole position. Remains to be seen whether LTK Tarrier is going to challenge there. He's on an outlap now already. So LTK will be looking to reclaim that pole position from Barney. It has just been taken away from him. I'm on board with Scorter there, but that is not an actual lap, I don't think. I think Scorter has maybe set his final lap of the session tonight. So for the sprint race, it's going to be 7th or worse for the currently top-placed Kick Sauber driver. But here's the 2nd place Kick Sauber driver, Truj Steri, approaching the timing line at the end of Sector 2 now. We've seen a couple of drivers do this, so we might get a little bit of a feel for how fast this is when we watch the time come in here. 56.827. It is half a second up on his lap time from Truj Steri. Incredibly fortunate there to not get the invalidation, running pretty wide on the exit of that corner, but just about manages to keep the car pointed in the right direction. As I say, it's about half a second improvement on Truj Steri's previous lap time, and in the end, it's an improvement of only about a 10th and a half, sitting on 11th. It'll be 11th or worse for Truj Steri. You see lots and lots of people, though, currently on their outlaps. TS has just started his flying lap here, I believe, but we also have Skullkiller, Arbon, and Igor, who are yet to set a lap time in this qualifying. It's going to be Igor who crosses the line first. So we'll ride on board with the Williams driver for a moment and see where he can position himself at the start of tonight's sprint race. Looks clean, but is it fast? It's reasonably fast. 12th place there for Igor. Not a bad return at all in the end. Arbon in the Red Bull manages to knock Igor down a spot because he will be sitting 11th on the grid, and again could drop out. I think Infinity actually didn't get the opportunity to set a lap there. Right now I actually need to concentrate on who is nearing the final few corners and really try and understand which drivers are going to be crossing the line. I can see there's a Haas. I think it's Barney who's just pulled up and letting other drivers through. Right then, TS, I mean, this looks pretty quick. That's good enough for 4th. What a lap that is from the Williams. TS putting himself in the discussion there, shooting up the grid. Soul Demon, LTK Tarrier, by the way. Oh my goodness, has just knocked Barney off pole. There you go. Everybody's crossing the line all at once, and I'm missing exactly what's happening, but we have a new pole sitter now. It's LTK Tarrier with a rapid 1:14.6. That will be the Alpine on pole position as it currently stands, and I think realistically there's not too many people who look capable of knocking him off that top spot for now. Snipes is around about 4/10 up on his previous fastest lap time. That is not going to be enough for the championship leader to find himself at the front of tonight's grid. What about this from Tolu? It's pretty fast. There's a 1:15.7, but that is only good enough for P8, and immediately it becomes P9. As I'm not sure exactly who, but somebody jumped ahead of Soul Demon right at the end. Final few cars then are set in the... Well, that's not a good lap from Skullkiller. So there you go. The grid is set. The grid is set because Igor brings the Williams into the pit lane to end the sprint qualifying for tonight. So LTK Tarrier will lead them out for the sprint qualifying tonight. A 1:14.6. 3/10 of a second ahead of his nearest rival. And I know what you're thinking, 3/10 of a second. Kelston, think about how many 3/10 of a second have gone by already just in this Twitch stream tonight. You'd be right. It's not a long, it's not like a big amount of time, but in Formula One, it's a pretty significant gap, to be honest. So pretty dominant performance, I think it is fair to say, from Tarrier in that sprint qualifying session. Barney, though, really good effort. The only other driver to break that 1:15 barrier will line up alongside in P2 in the Haas. Down the rest of the grid, you've got Zezin occupying P3, Test Wheel, championship contender, in P4, Wisburn P5, Jeff is in P6, Easy Game P7, Soul Demon is in 8th. Snipes, the championship leader, is in P9, and TS will round out the top 10 in that Williams, starting in 10th position. Interestingly for Snipes, his two nearest championship rivals, those being the VCarb boys of Easy Game and Test Wheel, both managed to out-qualify him ahead of the sprint race. 12 laps coming up for the Mexico Grand Prix sprint. No pit stops. Well, if it rains, crazy things could happen, but as we understand things to be at the moment, there will be no pit stops. It's just driving for the sprint race for tonight before we get onto that Grand Prix a little bit later. 8:22 is when they have been instructed to ready up the drivers, so I make that less than 60 seconds away, to be honest. So this one could start any minute. Get yourselves ready. How is Kelston? I'm okay, Lynn. Incredibly busy. Lots and lots of things going on. Not like work things, just life things. But I'm okay. We're getting through it. I'm excited, actually, to have a little bit of time tonight to just chill out. Watch some racing. I mean, it's probably not going to be that chill. Because of how close the Tier 2 Championship is at the moment. And this being the penultimate race of the season. It's probably going to be anything but chill tonight at Mexico. But, you know, I can chill out and enjoy some fine Grand Prix racing. So I'm excited about that. Well, I make it 22. They should be readying up any moment. I forgot the format for the sprints. I'm pretty sure, though, I'll try and check maybe sometime through the race, but I'm pretty sure that points are paid out to 8 places in the sprint. And it's essentially just 8 points for first, 7 for second, 6 for third. Here we go then, down to 5 red lights. Top 8, thank you, Milan. And away they go. It's a reasonably good start for the leader, LTK Terrier, but he has been overtaken now by Barney going into, or down to, I should say, the very long straight towards that first corner. The reasonably tight right-hander, the Haas, takes the inside line, and the pole sitter. Oh my goodness, I can't even find him. I can't even find him. LTK Terrier and Barney, in fact, both of them came together lap 1, turn 1, and Barney has DNF'd, so the Haas is already out. Barney, I'm not sure if that's like a technical problem or what, but Barney absolutely had enough, so second on the grid for tonight, and now he's out. And the man who was alongside him, LTK Terrier, we did see them come together a little bit as the Haas took the inside line going into turn 1. Both of them way out of the points, way down the pecking order. Very disappointing start for both of them, really. We'd have to watch it back and get both drivers' perspective to see exactly what happened, but it just seemed like a bit of a coming together, really, in a very intense start to the Grand Prix. Now, here's the super interesting thing. Testwill, who is currently sitting third in the championship, is now leading the sprint race. He does have Zezin for company, and very, very close company there for a moment. Look at how close that Mercedes is to the back of the V-Carb, just going through the first few corners of Sector 1. But Testwill leading the Grand Prix, and could be in a commanding position because Zezin has that gap, which is just about over a second to Soul Demon, who is behind in third. I think everybody else has more or less managed to come through unscathed, although I seem to remember that TS qualified a fair bit higher than 13th, and that is currently where he's sitting. Unfortunately, Truj Steri has at some point over the first lap, in fact, picked up a 3-second penalty. We don't really need to... Well, I guess we can look at tyres. In fact, interestingly enough, the race leader Testwill has opted for the hard tyres, so that could actually be interesting to look at come the end of the sprint race, which is only about 10 laps away now. But we're going to turn all of these things on. There we go, so that we can see exactly what is happening. And there it is. Yeah, TS has dropped 3 positions off the start. LTK Terrier, what a fight back this is, though. Dropped all the way down to 16th after that, coming together with Barney on lap 1, but now is already up to 10th. He's going to have cars in front battling him, does get overtaken by Tolu with the aid of DRS, I think it's fair to say, on that main straight, so we're not going to worry about that too much. But look at how close Terrier is getting to the back of the Red Bull through the first few corners. He seems to have this track absolutely nailed, and the setup looks pretty good as well. What gets you penalties? Cutting the corners, exceeding the track limits. So it can be cutting the corners, Lynn. Obviously not intentionally, just putting too many wheels over the white lines. But you can also do it on the exit of the corners, because if you run too wide, you've extended the track too much, and you know, you're too high a throttle, basically, getting too much speed and not obeying the confines of the track. So I think you need to exceed track limits 3 times, and then you get a 3-second penalty. You exceed track limits another 3 times, you'll get another 3-second penalty, and on it goes like that. So the penalties can really rack up, and they can change the outcome of the race a little bit. Testwill has lost the lead, but look at this, with the rear wing open, that massive main straight, start-finish straight here in Mexico really catches up to the Mercedes of Zezin that is currently leading the Grand Prix, and Testwill still has that gap to the cars behind. There's over a second, but the man who is behind him now is his teammate and really fellow championship contender, Easy Game, who's currently occupying the final spot of the podium, although fair old way to go in the sprint race before we start thinking about that just yet. But Easy Game leading a little train of cars down to, what is that, down to Snipes, really, down to the championship leader. Snipes done a pretty good job here of staying with the leading couple of packs of cars. Incredible fight back so far from LTK Terrier, though, who could well find himself in the points by the end of tonight, which would be pretty significant achievement when you consider there were only 12 laps in the sprint race and he had that absolute disaster start on lap 1. It's not worth me trying to point out or say whose fault it was, because I have absolutely no idea. It could also be nobody's fault what happened to the two drivers at the front of the race on lap 1, but either way, Tarrier has got a real fight on his hands here to make a success of this one. Got to get into that top 8, of course, to get himself into the points. Testwheel has retaken the lead of the Grand Prix down that main straight with the rear wing open, as you would expect, but that has allowed Easy Game to now catch up to the two race leaders, and he is now also within DRS range. So all the way back, look at this now. You'll get a pretty good shot of this from Testwheel all the way down to Snipes there. We've got cars in DRS range of each other. There will be lots and lots of rear wings open as we start lap 6 in a few moments. They are now rounding the final few corners of Sector 2. Those very fast sweeping corners, really, through Sector 2. Probably the most fun part of the racetrack, at least for me, to drive around. Not sure if everybody will feel exactly the same way. Wisburn, I think the last time I commentated on Tier 2 was my driver of the day, and so far, nice and solid from the Aston Martin man tonight as well. Testwheel sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, but I think you might see him under pressure here from the Mercedes at the end of this main straight. Maybe not, though. It does go on for a very long time, though, the straight here at Mexico, and you can see Testwheel is down to less than 10% battery at the end of the straight there, so burning absolutely everything, just trying to get every last bit of performance out of this V-carb to maintain the lead there. Easy Game dropped back a little bit, I think was under a little bit of pressure from some of the cars behind. Anything else interesting happening through the rest of the field, where you can also see that from not from LTK, but in fact from Arbon backwards, there's a little train of cars, and it looks like LTK was nearly going for an audacious, exciting move there. He really does feel like he needs to get past Igor here. Unfortunately, LTK has got a time penalty at some point as well that I've only just noticed, so that's going to have an impact come the end of the sprint race. Just goes from bad to worse, unfortunately, for Tarrier tonight, and the cars sliding all over the place. I'm not sure if he might even have some wing damage from the looks of that, or maybe it's just a case of desperately wanting to make a success of this. And there you go, we were riding on board when it happened. Bits of front wing going everywhere, and unfortunately for LTK Tarrier, after starting the race on pole position, that might be everything that she wrote, because he's going to have to bring that Alpine into the pit lane, you would think, in order to repair it. Okay, maybe he'll just race on for the final few laps. You never know what could happen, but man, really unfortunate sprint race, I think it's fair to say, for LTK tonight. As we see Scorser in the Kick Sauber retire in the pit lane. He's absolutely had enough, doesn't want to be involved in this anymore now. For the rest of the sprint, look at that. As we see Golden Egg Fryer up the, I think on the outside of Snipes for a moment there, but I'm not sure if that was the Haas trying to make a move on the Aston Martin. We're going to watch this one closely, because I think Snipes is getting pretty close to Jeff here. Jeff is no slouch, though. He's an incredibly fast driver, really, all season. I'm going to make it easy for Snipes to try and gain some ground through the middle of the pack. The other Kick Sauber has now retired as well. Unfortunately, Trude Steri is out of the race, although is on track, in fact. Trude Steri out of the race, but on track, so I'm not sure exactly what's happened there. Look at the gap from second to third now. It's about 3 seconds, but Wisburn going to be under threat here from Easy Gamer. There you go. The V-carb taking the inside line. Can't quite get the move done down the straight, but does get the inside line around turn 1. You see the Aston Martin coming back through the next couple of corners, and a little bit of a wobble as Easy just tries to get that power down. But here's the killer, really, at Mexico, because of the way that Easy got that move done. Wisburn then doesn't get the DRS on the next straight. Now, it's not the longest straight in the world, but then struggles Sorry, I had my cursor on the screen for a long time. Struggles to keep up with the straight line speed. Albon running a pretty solid race at the moment. Looks good to be closing out the points paying positions in 8th, but this is really where things are exciting. I mean, the win of the race is still absolutely not decided because Zezin and Testwill are really going for it, as we see, unfortunately, a 3-second time penalty handed out to Soul Demon, which is likely to move him down to the back of the points paying positions tonight. But he's not, you know, he's not beyond 8th place yet, so it's not the worst thing in the world for Soul Demon, but that's going to feel pretty bad indeed. Not really a chance. Look at that. No battery remaining there for Zezin. No chance to get that move done. We have, what, 4 laps to go in the sprint race for tonight, as we see another 3-second time penalty given out, and this time it is to Skull Killer in the Ferrari. The only Ferrari running tonight is unfortunately down in a, I think it's fair to say, disappointing 11th place with that 3-second time penalty. Now that's essentially the sprint race over for Skull Killer. Albon is a long way back from Snipes, who is out in front P7. But Tolu, his teammate, and Igor, and to be honest, Skull Killer are reasonably close to Albon, just behind. A 3-second time penalty for Golden Egg Fryer. And we could see some high penalty numbers from the actual main Grand Prix then, if this is the kind of time penalties we're getting just over the course of 12 laps for the sprint. Jeff's going to fall down a little bit. See Zezin, absolutely no battery remaining once again at the end of that main straight, just burning absolutely everything to keep up with Testwill. And in fact, Testwill now has the battery advantage over the man behind. Just look at that straight line speed of the V-Carb. Fair to say Testwill was giving it absolutely everything, burning every last inch of juice in the battery, but he really seemed to pull away from the Mercedes there for a moment. Well, Wisburn's going to be feeling pretty comfortable, I think, about maintaining 4th position with those cars behind him on time penalties, but could also be looking to snatch a podium away from Easy. We're going to ride on board with Zezin now, who has slightly less battery than Testwill in front, but they're both going to be burning absolutely everything you would think down the straight here. But Zezin just so far back and really struggling, it seems, to keep up with that straight line speed of the V-Carb. So it seems like Testwill just running a very low wing setup here, just giving himself absolutely every opportunity to be very slippery in a straight line. It looks like it's going to be tricky for Zezin to get the move done then, with just, what, about a lap and a half now left to go in the sprint race. Now you see Wisburn pulling up pretty close to the second V-Carb, running currently in P3. Definitely a chance at a podium here in the sprint for Wisburn. Tolu, in the midst of all that, Tolu has moved himself into the final points paying position at some point, got the move done on his teammate Albon. So it looks like Tolu might be the only Red Bull taking points out of tonight's sprint race. Seems like everything's reasonably settled, though, down the back of the field. So we're going to focus on the front here, because they are about to start lap 12 and the final lap of the first of 2 races tonight for the sprint race. Look at how far back Zezin is and has absolutely no battery remaining. Not a chance that Zezin's going to get anything like close enough to Testwill, but make sure you keep the car in between the white lines, because the time penalty probably is okay, but could end up being really tricky to there's any kind of an incident on this final lap. But it looks like Testwheel is looking really good for the win. But what about this? The battle for third. The Aston Martin is definitely closer to the V-Carb going into that corner this lap. It's not straightforward to know where he's going to be able to get the overtake done through the rest of the lap. Very twisty and turny, really, once you get through the first sector here at Mexico. And I think the tyres are struggling a little bit as well, as we see Wisburn falling back from easy game in front. Probably that dirty air from the car ahead also causing some instability. Zezin stays within a second of Testwheel, but it will be the V-Carb driver who rounds the final corner in the lead of the race and will win the sprint race for tonight. The first of two races, maximum points to Testwheel. That's going to serve him pretty well, I think, in the championship contest. Easy game does manage to hang on to that podium, though. He'll be finishing third, so really good result once again, it has to be said, in Tier 2 for V-Carb. Wisburn brings it home fourth. Snipes does manage to climb a few places through the race there, ends up finishing fifth, so not lost out too much, really, to the guys in front. Soul Demon sixth, Golden Egg Fryer in seventh, and Tolu takes the final points-paying position of eighth in the Red Bull. Maybe a little bit harsh on Arbon. Good race, though. I wish that we... perhaps I should have rode on board with the race leaders at the start. I'm sorry I couldn't capture exactly what happened, but at least we did see them coming together and we saw the little spin. I can also have a glance in the Discord now to see what happened. Looks like maybe it was Zezin. Maybe it was Zezin who caused the problem for Barney. In fact, I've got... You know what we can do while we wait for the qualifying to be underway? I've got a clip of it here. I'll show you exactly what happened. So this was the incident. Sorry, it's a little bit choppy. Ooh.
It's missing.
And he's round. Yeah, so LTK definitely clips Barney there. As you can see up here, it is LTK who's closest. Can't really see him on screen, but he's there for a moment. And then that takes LTK out, and then I'm not sure what happens to Barney next. Oh, and that's when Icy and then Zez, I think, is up the inside. And that's when Barney finally gets taken out. But there you go. That was what happened to the two race leaders tonight. Qualifying is already underway, though, for the main event. We're going over to the main Grand Prix now, which ought to be 36 laps long, I believe, when we get there, and will now feature pit stops and all the other exciting stuff that comes with that. A couple of drivers, though, just on their out laps at the moment. I'll make sure I turn some things on, as per usual. It'll be Testwheel who sets the first qualifying lap of the main qualifying session. See how that goes. Cars really snake their way through those fast sweeping corners. Great to see, actually, from that angle. And And there's Testwill making sure those tyres are nice and warm as he approaches Sector 3, the final few corners of the racetrack, and will be setting his first flying lap of the full qualifying session. We're going to ride on board with the VCARB, with the race winner in the sprint. There's Testwill to see what he can do in qualifying. Battery already down to about 40% at the end of the main straight. But it's probably the best place to be using the battery, really, on this racetrack. Nice and clean so far, carrying speed well through those first few corners. Everything's kind of a right angle at Mexico, isn't it? Kind of seems that way. Even this, it's like two right angles turned into one corner. And there you can see. Whoa, and that's an invalidation from Testwill. Just drifted outside the white line a little bit too much, and that lap is not going to count. It will be stricken from the record. Easy Games, hopefully I can get a similar result in the main race I did in the sprint with the P3. Yeah, you did great for that P3, Easy. We were watching, and it looked like Wisburn was putting you under a little bit of pressure, final couple of laps, so GG's on that. Yeah, the track is tough. The track is tough indeed. Zezin does complete his flying lap. As I mentioned, Testwill, unfortunately, did invalidate towards the end of his lap there, but Zezin provisionally on pole position. That's a pretty fast lap time as well if the sprint qualifying is anything to go by. A 1:15.0 for Zezin. There were only a couple of drivers that broke that 1:15 barrier in the sprint qualifying. So, fast start from the Mercedes. Now, who is approaching the end? Well, there's a Kick Sauber, and it is Scorter who has just completed his flying lap. A 1:15.8 though is fair old chunk away from Zezin, who currently leads the field. Here is, though, the championship leader, who didn't really do anything incredibly exciting in the sprint race, but manages to come across the line with a 1:15.5 in this qualifying session and slots into P2 for the moment. Igor sets a 1:16.1 and probably will be hoping to improve on that. Now, how is Testwill doing? Oh, right, yeah, of course. Has Testwill recharged the battery then with a view to going again on these worn, soft tyres? Possibly. Depends if he's got the fuel, though. Says he does have the fuel, so Testwill is going to go again. Ignore that time, a 1:28.4, because that was just a recharge lap, so it won't really count anyway. Skullkiller. Kind of a lap time can we get out of the Ferrari? A 1:16.5. Basically currently last, because we assume that Testwill will at some point at least set a lap. And then really, not too many other people out on track actually setting laps at the moment. Wisburn has just started his in the Aston Martin. Twooge Sterry coming through the first few corners, or the last few corners, I should say, of Sector 1. You might see Twooge Sterry in shot, in fact, sometimes behind Testwill, but he is a fair old distance behind, which makes sense, of course, to avoid any negative effects of that dirty air. For now, Testwill does keep it between the white lines. That was the section where he went off the racetrack before. Hard on the brakes there. Not much battery remaining. Has set a purple middle sector here, Testwill, so this could be a very fast lap indeed by the time he crosses the line. Let's have a see. 1:15.0 is currently the time to beat. That's not going to quite do it, but it's good enough for P2 from Testwill. Knocks Snipes down a place, a 1:15.3 for the VCARB. Now, where's that Kick Sauber, Twooge Sterry? Yeah, it's not. In fact, I don't know if it was invalidated or what, but it's not fast enough. Wisburn, a 1:15.3. There you go, P3. Knocking Snipes down another position. Soul Demon. First flying lap of the session for him. And I think another purple middle sector here, this time from the Alpine. Hasn't really strung those final few corners together exactly the way you would want, I don't think, but a 115.5 is very competitive indeed from Soul Demon, and puts him, what, about 100th of a second away from Snipes there on the leaderboard for the moment. Trujsteri then crosses the line with a 116.0. Probably going to be hoping for slightly better than that as the session draws on, but at least it's a lap time on the board. What about Jeff? Ooh, that was close. There is a purple middle sector from Jeff here. People love setting fast sector 2s. Probably just as the track conditions improve and the grip improves slightly. Look at that from Jeff, a 115.4 for Golden Egg Fryer in the Aston Martin. We've got an Aston Martin 3.4 on our hands currently. And what about Easy? Yet to set a lap time. Was in chat briefly and rightly receiving praise for that podium finish. Can't see any purple sector times in his history though. Final few corners. I don't think it's going to threaten pole position, but it's not going to be too bad here from Easy. There you go. 115.5. I mean, that seems to be the order of the day. There are 3 drivers currently on a 115.5, and Easy is the quickest of the lot of them, currently 5th position for the V-Carb. That is not a proper lap from Trujsteri, and he is just pulling that Kicksauber into the pit lane. Tolu slowing down for someone ahead. In fact, I think it was Squarter who was going flying past. Squarter, unfortunately, 2/10 up on his fastest lap time so far. So we'll just see if he can manage to swing the final few corners together. No, opted to abort. So Squarter not getting involved in that one. Just going to put on a new set of tyres and go again. Igor, I mean, this is slight improvement. In fact, it's a decent improvement. Look at the time that he gained through the final few corners there, because he was less than a 10th up when we first started riding on board, and then eventually knocked 3/10 off his lap time and a 115.8 for the Williams. Yes, I was going to say, I didn't think that was a real lap from Easy, and this is not a real lap from TS either. So basically, everybody out on track at the moment is just on a bit of a cooldown, bringing the cars back into the pit lane. So LTK Tarrier, Infinity, Arbon and Barney. Interestingly, LTK and Barney, the two who were at the front of the grid for the sprint race, yet to set a lap time. Not sure if that's because of invalidations or they've just decided that they're going to wait a little while. Track conditions improve, of course, as the session goes on ever so slightly. And maybe just try and set a really fast lap time then. But no lap time for those 4 drivers as yet. Zezin leads the way with a 115.0. But it was, of course, LTK and Barney who broke the 115 barrier in the sprint qualifying. So we could yet see a change at the top of the grid. See a Haas leaving the pit lane out in front of Igor. It is not Snipes, though. It is going to be Barney. Is it Barney? Wait. No, it is Snipes. I'm a liar. I just lied to you all. It is, in fact, Snipes. Just an outlap for the Haas driver so far. So what was the gain in the sprint for Testwill over Snipes? I think it was to be about 5 points or so, 5, 6 maybe even. And certainly a couple of points gained from Easy as well. But this is really where the big points are on offer in the main event, the main Grand Prix. Not sure if Snipes here. Is Snipes going to get the opportunity to set this lap, bring the car back around and set another lap? Hopefully he has timed that correctly, but he can. Here we go then. Snipes opening up the battery. And the championship leader is off on his second flying lap of the session. Excuse me. Opting to turn the battery down there slightly, in fact, to not completely burn it. Down the main straight, nice and tight. Out of turn 3. Tyres really squealing and screeching to try and keep the car pointing right, as we say. Very, very harsh on tyres, really, around Mexico. Should still be a one-stop, but I think the one-stop is not going to be super straightforward. It probably won't be recommended by the game initially. Snipes then, currently improving to the tune of about 3/10 on his previous lap time. But look at that battery percentage, and indeed the available battery deployment. Basically has used every ounce of battery available on this lap, and is going to cross the line now. Is it an improvement? It is an improvement, and it's pretty significant, in fact, because it puts Snipes onto the second row of the grid at the moment, a 1:15.3. That's pretty fast overall. Who's this? TS. Currently in 10th. I'm going through the fast sweeping corners of Sector 2. Was around about a 10th up on his previous lap time when I last glanced at the timing graphics. So let's see, is this an improvement for TS as he crosses the line? It is, and in fact, a much better improvement than it was showing before. 4.5 tenths up. P5 for the Williams, splits the Aston Martins there on the grid. Trude Stary here, I haven't actually seen... Oh, and Test Wheel's round! Test Wheel is round. That was a flying lap, I think. So the V-Carb's going to have to go again. Is he going to bring it into the pits? No, he's going to do same strategy as before and do another recharge lap. Man, if he's got a spare set of softs, though, it might have almost been advisable to just get the car into the pit lane there with the amount of time remaining. Because I think this lap that Test Wheel will set is going to have to be his final lap of the session. That's not a real lap there from Snipes. I'm not sure if he's still recharging here. Igor currently with a very minor improvement. Yeah, might as well forget about that. Trude Stary then. Disappointing start really for the Kick Saubers. Both ended up not finishing the sprint race tonight. Where can Trude Stary get himself on the grid for tonight's Grand Prix? Still got some battery to blast through, really. And does indeed turn it all the way up. Pretty good improvement, about half a second again. That gets Trude Stary up to P9 and ahead of Igor as things currently stand. They ought to be very close together there, to be honest, out on the racetrack. Now, Infinity yet to set a lap time. Is this going to be a good one for the Mercedes? Teammates doing really well. Led the session from start to finish so far. It's not the fastest lap you've ever seen, though, to be honest, from Infinity, and I think that is going to do it for the Mercedes. It's going to be 14th. or indeed worse. Has Barney got a qualifying ban? Not sure, but Barney opting not to qualify in the main event, which is interesting. Test Will, this is what I really wanted to see. Look at that. I'm pretty sure that said an improvement. Oh, but he's invalidated. It did say an improvement of a second, but Test Will has invalidated, so he's not going to be improving on his lap time. What about Snipes then? Approaching the end of Sector 1 here, so we'll see a little bit slower than his previous fastest lap time, but he really doesn't need much of an improvement to get himself onto the front row of the grid. So, championship leader, maybe slightly disappointing in the sprint, but so far, ooh, looking good in the main event. That was a little bit wide through the first corner of this section. And there you have it, has lost even more time through Sector 2, and in the end, just trying to give it absolutely everything. The Haas, thankfully, doesn't quite spin round and get in the way of other people, but that's going to be it for Snipes. No improvement for the Haas driver. Right, who's approaching then? We need to see Scorter. That's not a particularly fast lap. Skull Killer. No, that was not an improvement. Soul Demon, this is an improvement. Looked a little bit shaky through those final few corners, but has managed to keep the car going correctly. Look at that as a lap time from Skull Killer. Knocks Test Will and Snipes down to P3 and P4 respectively. Soul Demon gets himself onto the front row of the grid, and I think that was Easy, who just set a 1:15.223 as well, and we now have a new pole sitter. Right at the end, it's Golden Eggfryer with a 1:15.0, but no, Zezin, with no time to spare, reclaims pole position right at the end of the session, a 1:14.9, the only man to break the 1:15 barrier in the qualifying for the main event. But look at that, Wisburn. I should have been watching the Aston Martin, because out of nowhere, Wisburn, who is indeed on YouTube, sets a 1:14.946, just fractions. Fractions is what it comes down to. But Wisburn earns himself a championship point there, will be starting the main Grand Prix from pole position. Look at that for Aston Martin. They've got Wisburn in first, Golden Eggfryer in third, Zezin in an Aston Martin sandwich in second position. What a dramatic end to the qualifying. First, Jeff takes pole, Zezin takes pole back, and then Wisburn ends up at the front of the grid. But look at the disaster that all that has been, really. For Test Will and Snipes, it's exciting for us because the two main contenders in the championship currently are alongside each other on the grid. Test Will and Snipes in P7 and P8 respectively. But that is a little bit further down the grid than they would have hoped to have been. And in fact, Easy will be starting P5 ahead of them. So Wisburn takes pole position right at the end of qualifying. We'll be lining up P1. P2 is Zezin in the Mercedes. Then we have another Aston Martin P3. Golden Eggfryer on the second row. Soul Demons 4th. Easy Game 5th. Tolu 6th. Test Will in 7th. Snipes in 8th. Igor is 9th. And TS rounds out the top 10. So we have a Williams P9 and P10 to round out the first 10 positions. That was an exciting little qualifying session. Let me just ban the bot here that I've just noticed in chat. Apologies. Now things will actually be interesting. Now strategy is going to come into play. Tire management is going to come into play. It's no longer a sprint, it's a marathon. 36 laps coming up for the Mexican Grand Prix. Ready up for the main event is going to be at 9:06. So there's a little opportunity now if you want to go grab yourself a drink, grab yourself a snack. We've got a few minutes to wait before the main Grand Prix gets underway. So again, just while we're waiting for that to happen... Oh, don't look at that. Look at this. Here are the standings going into the sprint. So this has not accounted for the points gain during the sprint race so far. But Snipes, Easy Game, Test Will. In fact, I think I've been considering that this was the other way around, P2 and P3. But all of those drivers are really in with a shout, and Easy Game and Test Will, I think, are starting ahead of Snipes on the grid. Soul Demon, though, too, was putting in incredibly fast laps towards the end of qualifying. And there's Jeff sitting in P5. So, little bit like the usual suspects, to be honest. I think Wisburn maybe joined a little bit late, but has been putting in really solid, consistent performances last few races, at least the ones that I'm aware of. And look at the late charge from Zezin as well, and seems to really favour the track here at Mexico. So there could be yet more climbing through the ranks to be coming for the Mercedes driver. Look. What are people thinking about? Well, not too much just yet. Maybe the case that we have all medium runners and one hard runner, or two hard runners, in Trujsteri and Infinity. But I'm going to go to this screen now because it is not long to go before the Mexican Grand Prix is underway. It could be championship deciding. But that would probably involve chaos for Easy and Test Will. Easy in particular, and absolute bliss for Snipes. I can't really see that happening. I don't think that the championship will be decided tonight. I think it is going to go to that final round, which I believe will be in Zandvoort, the Dutch Grand Prix next week. Should be starting any moment then. Very long straight, as we know, down to turn 1. Really got to get away well off the line and just position your car properly. There's going to be lots and lots of cars approaching turn 1 at incredibly high speeds, all in very close proximity to each other. It surely should be starting any moment. There we go. We are now down to 5 red lights. And that was a pretty long hole, but it is eventually lights out and away they go. I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I think we're going to ride on board with the race leaders down this very, very long straight into turn 1. But look at that. There is so much movement happening behind, cars jostling for position all over the place. Wisburn does manage to position his car on the inside there at turn 1, but it's going to yeah, just about maintain the inside line for turn 3. But really, Zezin and Wisburn side by side as they head down into turn 4. Did we lose anybody? It looks like, well, maybe there was a bit of a problem for Tarrier and Barney at the back. Once again, we'll have to check that one out. But for now, look at that. Wisburn was very, very wide on the exit of that corner. But so far, they managed to hold their position that they started in. Wisburn in first, Zez in second, Golden Egg Fryer in third as we watch all the cars come flying through the fast corners. It seems like Barney and Tarrier have joined forces there for a moment. The two cars are ghosted inside of each other. Hopefully that all corrects itself shortly. That Mercedes looks perilously close to the Aston Martin and is going to have a pretty significant advantage, you would think, down the main straight here as we get ready to see lap 2 underway. Now let's just see how close with the slipstream Zezin can get. He is gaining. He is gaining. It's not going to be quite enough of a gain on that first straight there. We see Squatter, I think, getting the move done on Igor into turn 1. And looks really solid. Looks just like a comfortable play made by the Kick-Sauber man. Right, let's turn on some tyres. Let's see what we're actually dealing with. And as I mentioned at the start of the race, we've got a field full of medium runners, apart from Trudsteri in the Kick-Sauber and Infinity in that Mercedes. Not too many position changes so far. Or at least not significant ones that I'm aware of. Let's have a look. Oh, 3 places gained for Testwill. Yeah, look at that. Testwill started 7th on the grid and is now ahead of his teammate, who is closer to Snipes in the championship battle. Well, that's not going to matter to Testwill because it is essentially a 3-horse race and it's every man for himself in the VCARB garage, that's for sure. Zezin surely will take the lead of the Grand Prix here with that rear wing open and just go flying past the Aston Martin. Yep, he's in front of him nice and cleanly before turn 1 comes around. So Aston Martin now P2 and P3. Jeff managing to hold off the challenge of Testwill behind. Hey Kreml, how are you doing? Good to see you. I hope you're well. We're live for Tier 2 tonight, and it is the penultimate race of the season. Your championship contenders, Kreml, I won't go through all the crazy mathematics, but it's this man, Testwill, in the VCARB. It's this man, Easy Game, in the VCARB. And it's this man who is currently leading the championship going into tonight's race. Snipes in the Haas, but is unfortunately a few places behind his rivals currently and sitting down in 8th position. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing very good indeed. Thank you for asking. I hope you are too. Zezin, look at that! Race leader with a 3-second time penalty. We're only on lap 3. Sometimes, though, that is what the mystery round can do. These drivers won't have had much time, if any time at all, really, to prepare. With it being the mystery round, look at how close Snipes is to Tolu there, but he's actually losing a bit of time in a straight line, it seems like, to the Red Bull. And Tolu actually gets the move done on Soul Demon. That is incredibly close between the Alpine and the Red Bull. We're going to ride on board with Soul Demon for just a few more corners, because that was close to contact being made, but well executed overtake really by Tolu, and it gives Snipes a bit of an opportunity to have a look up the inside of Soul Demon. Absolutely sends it. It's going to turn to the outside line. There is a little bit of wheel bumping between the Haas and the Alpine, and Soul Demon's going to get a couple of inside lines out of that one. Then is going to have to drift back though for these fast sweeping corners of Sector 2. Great racing there by Snipes, and moves himself up a place. Kind of keep his dominance of the championship going. Wisburn, though, now leading the Grand Prix and comfortably leading the Grand Prix, because Zezin, of course, has that really unfortunate 3-second time penalty picked up very, very early on, to be honest. But Wisburn was the pole sitter, worth remembering. Barney and LTK, I'm not sure what on earth has happened there, but insane performance during the sprint, and now they're both at the back of the grid, back of the pack. Ghosted? I don't know. Don't know, couldn't tell you. Ooh, a little bit of a wobble just as we go on board with Soul Demon, but just expert driving really, because he manages to keep it all together. The dirty air from those cars in front is not going to be nice to deal with through this section of the racetrack. But Soul Demon manages to keep it very nearly flat out, really, through that whole section. Wisburn has lost the lead there somewhere to Zezin. So the Mercedes is now out in front, but with that 3-second time penalty, is it really going to matter? Snipes has got perhaps another audacious move done, this time getting past Tolu in the Red Bull, and now has his sights set on his nearest to championship rival. Snipes up to P6, an easy game, currently second in the championship, is just ahead in P5, but Tolu makes quick work of the Haas there. I'm not sure, did Snipes not have DRS on that main straight? He may not have done. It's very, very easy for the Red Bull to get past. Unfortunately, there is a 3-second time penalty handed out to Trude Steri in the Kick Sauber. It's not going to be the final penalty that we see tonight. I can almost guarantee you of that. I mean, that was... what kind of a line was Skorter taking through there? I'm not sure if he's struggling with something a little bit, but it definitely seemed like the door was wide open for one or two of those William boys to make a little bit of a move. How close Snipes is here to the Red Bull in front. Is he going to try and get another move done on Tolu? Just doesn't have that straight line speed from the looks of it, even though he can go much quicker through the twisty sections of the racetrack. And Skorter, I think will have had a spin there, because Skorter is now down to 17th place. I looked away for a moment, and that's really unfortunate for the man who races alongside me in Tier 5 usually, and as my teammate. Yeah, I lost about 12 seconds on that lap, so something chaotic, unfortunately, had happened to the Kick Sauber there. Now, there is an interesting situation developing at the front of the race, which we're not going to watch, but we can explain. Zezin seems to be breaking the DRS range on Jeff and Wisburn. Jeff, in fact, sitting now in P2 of the race. So if that keeps up, and the guys behind keep battling, the 3-second time penalty might mean absolutely nothing at all. Zezin is now in a potential position, still running away with this Grand Prix. Definitely not going to be straightforward from here, though. We're only soon to be 7 laps in to this Grand Prix. Great shot there from Soul Demon, where you can see Snipes getting incredibly close to Tolu in the Red Bull in front. And that is a very early pit stop from Tolu. I'm not sure if it's going to be a retirement in the pit lane, but he's only got the medium tyres on and decided he wants to get rid of them. Yeah, after 7 laps. He has fit the hards, so that's pretty interesting. Look at Soul Demon trying to have a look up the inside of Snipes there into turn 1. Snipes, to be fair, takes a very wide line trying to afford the Alpine space, but to be honest, the move was so audacious that Soul Demon couldn't really get anywhere near the Haas on the apex. Things are happening in front. Test Will and Easy Game getting very, very close together. Really tentative for these two, but I suppose the thing is for VCARB, the Constructors is already wrapped up, right? Racing Bulls have already won the Constructors' Championship in Tier 2, so really, these guys don't have to think too much like teammates for the remaining races this season, that of course being this one, and then the final race next week. So definitely could get a little bit spicy as the race continues. They don't need to be too careful of each other, really. I don't know what's happened with Barney and LTK. I just can't explain that one to you. Snipes is in the pit after just 8 laps on the medium, so maybe people are going for the 2-stop here. Seems like that might be the way, because there's no way they're going to try and take the hards like 30 laps. Or are we set for rain, and is everybody just preparing for that a little bit? That could also be a feature that I'm not aware of, because it won't tell me things like that. Yeah, Zezin, though, is maintaining that gap to the cars behind, but he would have hoped probably with the clean air and not much challenge that he might be able to pull out a stronger lead here. But 2.5, you know, it's halfway into that 3-second time penalty. The guys behind could end up with time penalties by the end of the Grand Prix. So Zezin still in a pretty commanding position despite that 3 seconds to his name. Now come back later. If you be online, we can have a little chat. Yeah, we can have a chat if you like, Kreml. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I'm kind of trying to concentrate on the action a little bit. I'm probably missing all the important things that are actually happening, but, you know, trying to keep tabs. That was a huge gain for Jeff down the main straight. Huge gain. Which is interesting. He didn't have the rear wing, but maybe just burnt a load of battery. But look at Zezin's battery percentage. So perhaps the Mercedes driver just starting to struggle a little bit. We have seen a few drivers pit already. So maybe these medium tyres are now starting to hit that wall where performance is really going to drop off. There is another 3-second time penalty for Trude Sterry. I'm pretty sure, I'll just check, that brings him up to... Oh, what am I trying to look at? 6 seconds. Yeah, it is unfortunately 6 seconds now for Trude Sterry in the Kick Sauber. Nice little gap developing around Soul Demon there in the Alpine, who seems to have laid a claim to 6th position. Igor, yep, there it is. I was trying to get back to it. The Williams, not sure exactly what happened, but has ended up going off the racetrack, collided with the wall slightly. Hopefully he doesn't get a time penalty for that, because I think it's just a little bit all out of sorts. Can we see any damage to the front wing of the Williams here? I'm not sure if it's... he seems to be driving very tentatively. There are people in front pulling into the pits, and there's all kinds of things happening, but I would like to see a little bit of what's going on with Igor. It does look like there's maybe an end plate missing on the front wing of the Williams there, so a bit of a coming together and a bit of a kerfuffle. And in fact, Igor does now retire in the pit lane, so that's enough for Igor tonight. TS is the only Williams still running in the Mexican Grand Prix. We have had the first of the race leaders pit. Wisburn came into the pits there and fitted a fresh set of medium tyres, so that's certainly a 2-stop from Wisburn. Perhaps you just can't do a 1-stop at Mexico. You might as well forget about it. So everyone looking at that 2-stop. That was TS going very slowly through this section of racetrack, and that is unfortunate because it could be a really bad day for Williams now. Oh yeah, look at that. Huge damage there to the left side of TS's front wing. Not sure exactly how that happened, but he's barely got much of a front wing left at all. That car is not going to be handling very nicely. And TS definitely going to bring it into the pits. Will he retire in the pit lane? Remains to be seen. You never know. You know, safety cars can happen. Things can definitely happen. Infinity getting the move done there on Arbon and staying nice and cleanly ahead into turn 1. Okay, so what we want to see now, let's have a look at the gap to the leader. How long is a pit stop at Mexico? Because currently Wisburn has a 20-second gap to the race leaders. I feel like that's going to make sure that Wisburn is in P1 from the end of this first round of pit stops. I'm still not sure what on earth is going on with LCK. We're just not going to worry about it. Zezin pits. Zezin has now pitted, so let's get on board with Wisburn for a moment, because he's rounding the final few corners. I'm pretty sure Wisburn, yeah, he's going to come out ahead of Zezin here for sure. And actually might have some traffic between him and the Mercedes driver, so that would be really quite significant indeed. There you can see just in the background of that picture there was Zezin exiting the pit lane, and he's got Snipes and Tolu out ahead of him, so the undercutters also worked for Snipes and Tolu. Zezin fitting a new set of medium tyres there. Very interesting. All four of those cars pretty close together on the racetrack at the moment, though. Right about a third of the way through tonight's Grand Prix. We have to see some of these guys in front, you would think, pit pretty soon. If everyone's getting those mediums off now, they must be feeling the burn, really. But, no, Eggfryer, easy game. Opting to continue on. Soul Demon will now bring his Alpine into the pits, and I would think... Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to go flying past him. Wisburn sets the new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 1:18.0. Aston Martin is absolutely flying out there at the moment. I think that Tolu, yeah, does have DRS behind. Look at this. Down the main straight, though, we have Zezin and Snipes side by side into turn one. Little bit of contact. Snipes does well to keep the car pointed in the right direction. Tolu was very nearly an unfortunate victim to that whole episode as well, but thankfully everybody comes out unscathed. Zezin and Snipes are not giving up on this fight. Zezin maybe thought about a bit of a dive up the inside there into, is that turn 4 or 5? Ooh, and then a little bit of a clip on the Haas from behind, and another one. This is a fair amount of contact, really tight and twisty through this section of the racetrack at Mexico, and I think Zezin just struggling to keep his Mercedes far away from Snipes. But now you see the dirty air coming into play through these long sweeping corners. Look at the move being done in front, though. Tolu goes flying past Skull Killer, and Snipes, yep, does manage to hang it around the outside of the Ferrari, and around the outside of the Ferrari goes Zezin as well, getting the move done. Skull Killer just got overtaken by, I think, about 3 or 4 cars, all in the space of about 3 seconds. This could be very interesting. Who's got the DRS and who's got the straight line speed? It is Arbon, I think, who's going to be the unfortunate victim of just not quite race leaders, but nearly race leaders battling away. Zezin takes the inside line to turn 1, does get the move done on Snipes, who slots in behind nice and safely. Now Tolu in front still has his rear wing open because of how the DRS detection works here at Mexico. Testwell also gets past Arbon and is now with this leading pack, really. This is really the pack of cars that are leading the race, aside from Wisburn, who has that 2.5 second gap to Tolu behind. These are really the challengers, and they're just making their way through the traffic, having made their pit stops now. So thankfully it looks like everyone's just about made it through. Easy, though, might be the man who is struggling. In fact, he's only just pitted. This is his first lap out of the pit lane, so Easy maybe has pitted a little bit too late, unless he's going for the one stop. It could be an attempt at the one stop here from Easy, given how long he took those mediums. So we'll also keep up with that one. Bit of a dark horse for a race win, in fact, there, if that is the way that's going to go. Wisburn already back into the lead of the Grand Prix now that everybody in front is, well, I was going to say in the pits, but actually I'm not sure what has happened to Infinity. Arbon's in the pits. But this is what we really want to see, because this is where the excitement is happening. Zezin, I'm not sure why Tolu was so wide through turn 1, whether Zezin was making some late sends or what, but Zezin does move himself up into P3. He does, of course, have tyre advantage, to be honest, on some of those guys behind, because he's got the fresher medium tyres, but judging by people pitting, they're going to fall off at some point, and Infinity does not make that difficult at all there for his teammate. He has 15-lap-old hard tyres, allows Zezin to go flying past, and now, through this twisty section of racetrack, could end up holding up some of the cars behind. Snipes is currently in a V-carb sandwich. That is not where the championship leader wants to be, although Easy is a cool 4.5 seconds behind the Haas driver as things currently stand. Yeah, this is tricky now for these guys. Is Infinity going to come into the pits? Absolutely not. I think he's just going to try and make things as awkward as possible. But to be honest, with those rear wings open, you're going to see everybody go flying past Infinity, you would think, here down the main straight. There goes Tolu. There goes Test Will. Snipes, though, can't quite get close enough to make it happen. We're going to watch Test Will here for a moment, who takes the outside line. Then it becomes the inside for turn 2. It's the outside again for turn 3. Seems to have a better run, though, better traction than Tolu coming out of turn 3, and does get the move done. So Test Will is now up into P3, provisionally on the podium. But look at that late lunge from Tolu in the Red Bull, and that's allowed Snipes to get back in this race. They were 3 wide for a moment through one of the narrowest sections of the racetrack. And while Test Will and Snipes go side by side, it gives Tolu the opportunity to try an incredibly audacious switchback. This is going to be an intense race, you would think, for many, many laps to come. And there's really one benefactor. His name is Zezin. He has caught up to the race leader, Wisburn. And it's really these two who are going to be battling for a while now, because the gap to Snipes behind is over 5 seconds at this point. So all kinds of jostling for position happening between P3 and P5. And that's allowed the two race leaders to pull away and develop a pretty significant gap. There you see Easy also finally getting the move done on Infinity. But look at all that battling in front. It's now allowed Easy to catch up. He's within a second of the cars in front and only has 3 laps spent currently on his hard tyres. I think Easy might be trying to pull off a one-stop here. I think it would be it'd be very, very impressive. But especially keeping up a pace like this could end up being really, really fruitful too. I apologise if I'm missing any goings-on down the rest of the field. I'm sure there's excitement happening all over the place, but this really feels like where the action is at the moment. None of these drivers wanting to give an inch. Infinity could be opting for a bit of a one-stop strategy as well. We'll see if he gets the hard tyres off soon. How close they are. All 4 of the drivers there. Tolu, Snipes, Easy, and Jeff. There's gonna be some position changes, surely, down the main straight. Tolu is going to do incredibly well to hold off the drivers behind, because he will not have that rear wing open. But they're having to battle each other a little bit as well, which might work in Tolu's favour. This is going to be incredibly intense. Easy looking up the inside of the Red Bull into turn 1. Can't quite get it done. Snipes losing a little bit of traction, and now under pressure from Golden Egg Fryer as we see Easy try and pull out to get the move done on Tolu. He does still have that rear wing open. Takes a look up the inside of turn 4. It's an incredibly tight corner to try and take it at that kind of an angle. Switchback from the Red Bull and has to go off the track. Tolu might argue that he was forced off the track there, really, from Easy. But thankfully, again, nobody seems to have suffered any major damage, and it seems like the race can continue. But that little episode has maybe made this slightly two-tiered, with Snipes and Easy in their own little battle, and Tolu, unfortunately, is the man to lose out. Definitely didn't seem like he had many places to position his Red Bull on track. And what a slide that was, and what a catch that was from Jeff, with the back end kicking out, but gives the steering wheel a wiggle, modulates his throttle properly, and keeps everything ticking along. Yeah, there you have it. Tolu does not have his rear wing open, and that could have been disastrous, but I think that Jeff is going to manage to catch up to Snipes in front. We'll see how that one goes. This is incredibly exciting, though. Zezin has now taken the lead of the Grand Prix at some point while all that's been going on, and has over a second lead to the car behind. Very exciting stuff so far. So there's another 3-second time penalty for Tolu, but you would think, I think that brings Tolu up to 6 seconds. It does indeed. Look at some of those time penalties that are happening down the rest of the grid. Really unfortunate. A 10-second penalty for Albon, which is probably due to speeding in the pit lane. But yeah, Tolu, you would think, wants to get one of those wiped off, if indeed he was pushed out wide in that incident that we saw a few laps ago. But all sorts of things can happen with time penalties by the end of the race, to be honest. It's definitely opened up here. I mean, the gap from Jeff, in fact, Soul Demon has moved past Tolu, so I'm not sure what on earth has happened there. Wisburn is in the pits. Interesting. So Wisburn making his final pit stop, fitting the hard tyres, which should see him through to the end of the race. He hopes Jeff gets the move done on Snipes down the main straight with the DRS advantage, and he's going to keep that rear wing open. Is the Haas? Yeah, the Haas gets it too. Fair enough. Easy, though, in the V-carb in front does not get it. The gap for Zezin from Testwill is now over 3 seconds. That nullifies the time penalty. We did say that the Mercedes looked like he was absolutely flying when he's got clean air to run into, and that is still the case. A 3-second time penalty for Snipes. Championship leader gets his first time penalty of the Grand Prix. That could be incredibly significant come the end of everything. Here's Wisburn. I mean, already P9 after his pit stop. And he's going to be thinking that most of the guys in front are going to need to pit again at some point. So I think Wisburn is in prime position at the moment. Let's again see what his gap is like to the race leader. About 22.5 seconds. That is going to come down, though, because those medium tyres that Zezin currently has on will not get him to the end of the race. I can absolutely guarantee that one. Tolu is in the pits. It's a new set of hards. They should go to the end of the Grand Prix. Squatter gets by Tolu in the pit lane. Otherwise, let's turn it back to interval for a second so we can see where the really close battles are. And it's still this little cluster of cars here. Easy pulling out a bit of a gap, you would say, to the guys behind. But Jeff and... in fact, no, excuse me. Testwill pulling out a bit of a gap to the guys behind. But Jeff and Snipes still very much in this battle. Snipes obviously has his penalties, but you never know what's going to happen with penalties. They can be removed, they can be challenged, additional penalties can be given. You might as well just not worry about it too much, really, and worry about the position of the cars that you're seeing on track. Unfortunately, Snipes is far enough behind Eggfryer that he does not have the DRS there, so Jeff might have the opportunity to get a move done on easy here and get himself provisionally into a podium position. Take a look at this from the Aston Martin. Has a look around the outside of turn 1. Nothing happening there, but now is he going to get a better run through turn 3? Now just loses traction ever so slightly, has to correct, and that gives Easy the better run. And you would think now that the Aston Martin is not going to catch him by the end of this much shorter straight. But Snipes, yeah, lost a lot of time there on that previous lap. Has he got damage? We'll have to have a look here. Does there seem to be anything wrong with that Haas? Well, not from the images there. Not from... oops. Sorry, I just knocked the microphone. Probably sounded awful. Not from the images there at all, so... seems to be a bit of a miscalculation has happened somewhere for Snipes. And in fact, sold him. Now goes flying past the Haas driver. So what has happened here? Maybe there is some damage that it's just not visible. We can't see it. Snipes is coming into the pit lane. His tyres are now 14, 15 laps old, so it sort of makes sense. But he's definitely going to fit a set to lead him through to the end of the Grand Prix. There you see Jeff Getting the move done on easy game. A little bit more straightforward that time, just with the aid of DRS on the straight. Doesn't have to worry about doing any overtaking through the corners. Tolu. Fastest lap of the Grand Prix, a 1:17.8 for the Red Bull Racing driver. Worth a point. It's worth a point if you finish in the top 10. And this championship is pretty close. On things like that, it could be decided. Probably not by Tolu, but Tolu taking the points away from somebody else could indeed decide where the championship goes. Now, test wheel, less than 3 seconds the gap to Zezin in front, but there's not a chance, is there, that test wheel is intending to go to the end? What I want to see here is stops. Yeah, test wheel is going to come into the pits. But Easy, this is what's really interesting, is Easy has made 1 stop and his tyres are 10 laps old. I don't think he wants to stop again. I think Easy's going to the end of the Grand Prix, and actually, so's Jeff in front. And Jeff now, ooh, Easy does just about have the DRS here. He's going to want to try and keep up with Jeff. I need to actually focus on what other things are happening, though. Snipes has fit the mediums. He has fit the mediums here. You can see him just ahead of Skullkiller in the Ferrari there on the picture. So mediums for Snipes to the end. But who needs to pit in front? I mean, maybe Soul Demon, but even then, maybe not. I think this may be a race that gets decided, excuse me, on just superior strategy calls, really. Because it looks like the one-stoppers have a really big advantage to play with currently. Wisburn has looked like the fastest man on track for most of the evening, but you know, he's had an extra pit stop to play with. Hey Brian, how you doing? Welcome on in. It's the penultimate race of the Tier 2 season, season 13 of Revolution, that is. I'm not racing tonight, but I am watching, and we have very interesting championship fight on our hands. This man here, who is P2 in the championship, is currently P2 in the race, and the championship leader is all the way down in P6. So this could be a very significant game for Easy Game going into the final race of the season. You got done with class like 40 minutes ago? Cool. If you have a nice chill afternoon, chill evening, thanks for coming, dropping by. But yeah, I'm afraid we're in the thick of it now. I can't really get you up to speed on everything, but you know, it's exciting. Scorter, unfortunately, gets a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane and then retires in the pit lane. So once again, the Kick Saubers are not able to finish a race in Mexico. Really unfortunate for them. Both dropped out of the sprint race, and now both have dropped out of the main Grand Prix too. Test Will, you saw Snipes in the picture there, getting incredibly close to Test Will in front. So we're going to stick with these two for a moment. I think that Snipes will, of course, get him in the DRS zone anyway, so probably do well to just save a load of battery here and just make sure that he stays within a second of the V-Carb. Golden Egg Fryer, though, is pulling out a lead in front. We're not going to go over to them, but yeah, it's pretty significant. There's a new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and it is Test Will is the man ahead of the car that we're on board with. Look at that straight line speed. I mean, he must be burning every ounce of his battery. Look at that. Nothing left in the tank by the end of the straight. Oh, and there's a Kick Sauber going a little bit wide. I'm not sure what's happened there, though, because Scorter definitely retired in the pit lane. I don't know if it's just thrown a Kick Sauber back out or something. Jeff gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple track limits warnings, and that could end up deciding the race, and it could end up deciding the championship. That's how critical this is now, because Easy now has a pretty clear sight to the win, you would say. I mean, It's tricky because he looks slower than Jeff. Jeff is definitely pulling out a bit of an advantage on easy, although this straight line speed of the V-carb is something else here in Mexico by the seams of it. But yeah, Jeff looks overall faster, but he's going to have to pull out a pretty significant advantage now to wipe away that 3-second penalty. There's a new fastest lap of the Grand Prix. This time it goes the way of Zezin in the Mercedes. Really, all of these drivers, it feels like, have put in a really good shift here. I think it's really unfortunate that we're talking about how Wisburn has lost 3 positions, starting on pole position for tonight. But, you know, the truth is, the strategy call was wrong. Those guys in front, I mean, their tyres must be absolutely aching. Wisburn might even be able to catch them by the end of the race, but it just seems like the strategy hasn't worked out. There's another 3-second time penalty, unfortunately, for Tolu, who now, I'm pretty sure, is going to be finishing behind his teammate. Oh no, because Arbon got the 10 seconds for speeding in the pit lane, so going to maintain his position on track then. Snipes still pretty close. The test will in front, but there's not really much of a chance that they're going to have the opportunity to really challenge the guys in front. Look at the gains, though. I'm pretty sure last time I looked at Wisburn and his gap to Soul Demon in front, it was about 4.4-ish seconds. And that's already come down by a second, I think, in a lap. So with the time penalties obviously being a factor, I mean, Wisburn's not out of this one yet. He can definitely push his tyres a lot harder than the guys in front. All offside on Golden Egg Fryer. I mean, for the time being, Easy's doing a good job of just keeping his gap to Jeff manageable. And as long as Easy doesn't end up with a time penalty of his own, like I say, it should be a pretty straight shot to the race win, really. If he does end up with a time penalty of his own, then suddenly everything's back online again. But look at that, Wisburn once again seems to have knocked off a lap on the car in front, so he'll catch Soul Demon. You would think he's already finishing on the podium because of how the time penalties are working out, but you would think he'll catch Soul Demon, in fact, now by the end of the race. But look at that. Dancing into the picture comes Zezin in the Mercedes. Incredibly late move, it seemed like, into turn 1, but the Mercedes does end up in front of Wisburn after that one, which will probably be a little bit annoying for the Aston Martin man, considering Zezin has time penalties of his own to deal with. Easy dropping back all the time from Jeff. So the win is not tied up. Ignore everything I'm saying, to be honest, because the race win is anything but tied up so far. Snipes, though, looks like he doesn't really have the pace to keep up with Test Will. Not sure if he's just pushing these medium tyres really, really hard, but I mean, he's also got the time penalties to his name as well, so maybe for Snipes it's just about damage limitation at this point. And I'm talking like as though 7th isn't good, you know what I mean? 7th is like a fine finish in the Grand Prix, but this title challenge is going to be so close now, going in to the final Grand Prix of the season, which will of course be next week. And again, I think it is in the Netherlands, at Zandvoort, I should say. Wow, and Soul Demon has to go very, very wide. I'm not sure if there was a coming together with Zezin through the first few corners of the lap there, but very, very wide indeed by the Alpine. Maybe there was a little bit of contact and a little bit of getting the elbows out from everybody involved. Nobody wants to give an inch, really, from this type of position. Soul Demon, though, fair to say, struggling now. These tyres are 17 laps old, and they will be screeching, squirming and squealing all the way to the checkered flag, but there is not a chance now that Soul Demon wants to bring that Alpine back into the pit lane. How do time penalties work? Well, let me show you here, Brian. See those penalties next to the drivers' names? That is currently the penalties that they have to their name, and that will be added to their time at the end of the race. So you can see, like, the gap from Wisburn to Soul Demon here, right, is 0.8, 0.7 of a second now. It's coming down all the time. But really, it's actually like 3.4 because Soul Demon gets 3 seconds added to his finishing time. You get time penalties. Ooh, and a little bit of contact between the two cars there. You get time penalties by exceeding the track limits, basically. Putting your car outside of the white lines of the track. If you do that 3 times, you get 3 seconds. If you do that 3 more times, you get 3 more seconds. You do that 3 more times, you get 3 more seconds. And it just accumulates like that. So you'll never really get a 1 second time penalty, but you can get them in groups of 3 by having made 3 track limit infractions, let's say. So Wisburn gets the move done on Soul Demon. That was the interesting thing that happened there, really. And you would think it's probably going to catch up to Zezin, but I need to turn this back to tyres to remind myself how everybody's going to be fixed by the end. Here's Easy. Now this is very interesting now. Easy has a gap to Jeff of 2.5 seconds. So this is why the time penalties matter. Right, Brian? So look here. Jeff, Golden Eggfryer, currently leading the Grand Prix in front of Easy. Jeff has 3 seconds that will be added to his race time. But currently, Easy is 2.7-ish seconds behind Jeff and is falling further back all the time. So there you go. It's just got over 3 seconds. So now, if the race were to finish right now, Golden Eggfryer would win the Grand Prix even though he has the 3-second time penalty, because you add 3 seconds onto his time and he's still finishing ahead of Easy. But wow, he must have taken a very weird line through those corners because he lost all of the gains that he just made there. So anything can still happen, but it's very, very tentative out at the front. Not really decided one way or another currently. There's another 3-second time penalty. And unfortunately, it's handed out to the man running in last. Last of the runners, anyway, TS in the Williams. Haven't really focused much at all on what's been going on near the back of the race tonight, but there's just been so much drama happening near the front that we haven't had the opportunity. Look at this, Zezin. Well, he's not quite within DRS range, so can't open the rear wing, but he's burning every last bit of battery that he's got available, and is making gains on Easy in front. Now that's... Ooh, and there we see Testwill getting past Wisburn. Both of those two are not dealing with time penalties at all. But the interesting thing about this one is if Zezin starts to challenge Easy, that could well hand the race win to Golden Eggfryer, because if they start battling and having to go slow through some of these corners, then Easy's going to really struggle to keep the gap to Jeff where it is currently and get an advantage out of that time penalty. It does look, though... Well, what's Zezin's penalties, though? I think it might be 6. Oh, no, it's 3. It's 3. So it looks like Zezin has confirmed himself a podium position by driving relatively smoothly. Testwill is in 4th. And there you go. There was the move. Zezin does get the move done on Easy. Those old, hard tyres are really not doing the race leaders any favours either. I think that's a huge part of what's going on. So as things stand currently, Easy is just about 3 seconds behind Jeff. So it's... you can't tell. You can't tell at this stage who's going to win the race. But it won't be Zezin, I don't think. I don't think it'll be Zezin. But even that remains to be seen a little bit, to be honest. Tolu just got a move done on Snipes, by the way. That was down the main straight. About a lap and a half left to go for these guys at the front. So just got to try and get your calculators out here and work out exactly what's going to happen. As things currently stand, Easy Game, who is third on track, is leading the race. I think Messi will win this race because he won the World Cup 2022. Well, I'll give you some long odds for that if you want. I'll give you some very long odds for that. Yeah, currently, Easy kind of in the driving seat, but not exactly. It depends whether Zezin... I mean, he has to go for the move here on Jeff, and he's going to have DRS, is he? Or no, he is. He's going to have DRS. So this is going to be critical. What happens here between Zezin and Jeff on the final lap of the race? Zezin, once again, has no battery remaining, but the gap is now 2.9 seconds, very close to that 3-second cutoff. Zezin's going to give it absolutely everything, but a little bit of a wobble, and it looked like Jeff was just a little bit more solid. The Mercedes not going to get the opportunity to get in front of the Aston Martin there, but that's very, very wide indeed from Jeff through turn 4, but I think it was maybe just to compensate for his line on the next corner, and it's a coming together by the two race leaders. I think that was maybe a bit overzealous from Zezin. That was not just elbows out, that was forearms and biceps out, completely shoving Jeff out of the way on the final lap of the Grand Prix. And the thing is, it's not going to hand Zezin the race win, because that little bit of battling has basically guaranteed that Easy Game is going to win the race, but it is going to knock Jeff down, provisionally at least, to third position and the final spot on the podium. Testwill, you will see in the end of the picture there, just crossing the finish line, and he actually finishes third. It knocks Jeff off the podium because Testwill was so close, so we got 2 V-carbs on the podium as things stand. Wisburn has to settle for P5 despite running a basically flawless race. Okay, I'm not sure what's happened there. Basically a flawless race on the 2-stop. Wow, crazy stuff, crazy stuff. Snipes definitely has lost out. Definitely has lost out tonight on the guys around him. Can only finish P7 here in Mexico. Easy Game, I think the race win for Easy Game will stand. But that final move between Zezin and Golden Egg Fryer, that is probably going to have a good long review from the stewards. Soul Demon, another solid performer really. This race finishes in 6th in the Alpine. Then we have 2 Red Bulls, 7th and 8th. It is Tolu, followed by Arbon. Well, one thing I can tell you is the championship has not been decided tonight, and it will go to a final race decider in the Netherlands next week for the final race of the season. At least I think it's the Netherlands. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you about that. I've said it a few times now, and I should really just check. Yeah, it will be. It will be Zandvoort for the final race of the season. But honestly, I don't think we can really trust those final finishing positions. But we can trust that man seems to have won the Mexican Grand Prix, and I'm pretty sure that's going to stand. So congratulations to Easy, currently 2nd in the championship, but is going to be right hot on the heels now of Snipes going into that final round. Zezin there takes P2, and then Testwill, incredibly, slots in P3 on the podium. Jeff, I'm sure, will be absolutely gutted down in Parc Ferme. He won't be able to believe that he hasn't come out with a better result there. But anyway, I'm losing my voice now because that was a long one. That was an incredibly long session because we had the sprint race and then the main race. Kreml, send me a message or something if you want to chat, because I'm genuinely losing my voice. But everybody, thank you so much for chilling out. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, we've still got one more race to go in the season, and that will decide whether the championship goes to Snipes or indeed goes to Easy Game. That'll be at the Netherlands next week on Wednesday evening. Oh my goodness, I'm missing the I'm missing all the YouTube chats. I'm so sorry, everybody. Don't change the camera view, keep it this way. I know, I need to switch it up a little bit. Yeah, sure, message me, Kreml, message me. Good to see you though, guys. I'm so sorry, I'm terrible at reading YouTube chats. I'm awful at it, because I stream on Twitch. And I've got the YouTube chat open, but it's far away from where my eyes can't see it. Yeah, okay, Kreml, I will do that. I will do that. Anyway, everybody, listen, I gotta go, because it's been a long session. I love you all a lot. Please be unspeakably and unreasonably kind to each other over the coming days. I'm going to be back, presumably racing on Friday night in Tier 5. We'll have Cerebral Sunday, of course, with Neo Automata starting at 7 o'clock UK time on Sunday night. Final race of the Tier 2 season will be upon us next week on Wednesday. Zandvoort to decide the championship winner. Good night, everybody.